Hi, Book Club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Keri.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 80, and our book is Kharn, Eater of Worlds by Anthony Reynolds. This is a republish of an older book that they just came out with in beautiful limited edition, and tells the story of the immediate aftermath of the Siege of Terra. Before Kharn's the betrayer, but after he's your friendly neighborhood Kharn. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Twitter, YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning, if you haven't yet read the book, go to the site, check out the book and the questions, and come back to this post as we'll be discussing the book from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. Did you like the book?
I loved it.
I greatly enjoyed this book.
So much fun. It's a fast read, which was good.
Very fast.
Because I didn't realize we were podcasting about this book tonight until Sunday. I was like, oh crap.
Whoops.
Whoopsie.
Whoopsie.
But it's such a fast read because it's so much fun.
It is. And it reads his prose. I have two very niggling complaints about the book. But other than that, his prose just, like, it just flew by. And I don't know if it was because I was just so invested in the characters and because I'm so partial to the World Eaters in general. And this one hit on a lot of themes that I really like with the World Eaters. So I was a little worried, like I was reading it, I was like, oh man, what if this is just me being partial to this and Keri's dying?
I was not.
Stood out to you?
So quite a few things. So go on ahead and get your glasses to drink because I'm reading The Horus Heresy right now. And
What?
I know, but I'm reading Betrayer right now. And I can't imagine reading this without either having read Betrayer or reading Betrayer at the same time because there's so much. So for example, one thing that stood out to me from the beginning is when Draeger, when he's kind of reflecting on what's happened with the World Eaters, and he actually blames the Emperor for how they've become because they didn't put down Angron like he wanted to.
That, by the way, that hit me really hard in the feels because if you remember on the book, it's like, oh, I blame the Emperor is like the bottom line on the page, and then you have to flip the page. Mm-hmm. And he said that, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. Right. The Emperor was a bad father. The Emperor didn't love them enough. The Emperor didn't stop this. And his next lines are, he just didn't let him die.
Yep.
Holy balls.
What that immediately reminded me of is an early on in Betrayer when Kharn is talking to Argel Tal. Because Argel Tal makes the comment that Angron is no Primarch. And Kharn's like, he's my Primarch. He goes, no, he's not a real Primarch. You feel it too. And Kharn admits that the reason they never felt a connection to him, and that was the reason why they all agreed to do the butcher's nails, was to maybe feel some connection to them. And Argel Tal's like, do you? He goes, no. There's still no. So the fact that Draeger was like, he's a broken thing. The Emperor never should have brought him back out. He should have just, because he wanted to die. He didn't want anything to do with anybody. Let him die. It's like, yes, it would have been hard, moving on without ever knowing your Primarch. He's like, but at the same time, he's like, it's gotta have been better than what this is. And I immediately just thought of, Kharn saying, like, we feel no connection to him. Everything we're doing is to try to feel something.
Yes. And that hit me really hard because it's such an interesting, like, I think, like, people have always kind of said that. And it harkens back to one of my favorite ADB quotes, and it's from The Master of Mankind, which you'll get there eventually, but they're one of the custodians is sassing off to a World Eater, and he says something along the lines how, like, your Primarch was the only Primarch that had to be rescued. every other Primarch was a leader of a world, where they were kings, they were lords, they were these, noble beings that had conquered their worlds, but not yours. Yours had to be rescued. Because he's just this, and, I rag on the Angron Primarch novel a lot, because I really, really vehemently hated that book. But, kills me inside to say, the one interesting thing about it is it does posit, I hate what it posits, but I hate the application of the theory, but the theory that maybe had he not had the butcher's nails, yes, he would have been, the Warhounds were always a little bloodthirsty. They were always a little more martial than everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little more tending to just want to kill things. Not very elegant. So maybe he could have been this like brutish Primarch who, yes, there were no frills to him. Hello, Ferris Manus. He's not a super great tactician.
He could have been more.
Entered the chat.
He could have been more gladiatorial, less berserker.
Yes, a little less rage monstery.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting, and the other part along that stood out to me that's kind of in that same vein is when Kharn is cleaning Gorechild and he's like, do you know why I have this axe? And he's like, it's not because, like, Angron chose me. He just discarded it. Like, he discarded it and I picked it up. And he discarded it because it was no longer of use to him. And Draeger's the one who's just like, yeah, no longer served its purpose. And Kharn's like, yeah, kind of like our Legion. Like, it just...
Yeah, there was, like, stuff like that just,
There's a sad tragedy. And then, of course, watching all of the World Eaters, like, slowly but surely just lose themselves to the nails. And, like, Draeger being like, no, that is not my future. I mean, yes, it is. It definitely is my future. But it's not my future. It always hits me in the feels.
I saw so many parallels, and I know this is, like, on purpose, between the World Eaters, the Descent to Madness from the Nails, and the Blood Angels with the Black Rage. I mean, I know that that's done on purpose because they're almost like very much the World Eaters and the Blood Angels are almost kind of two halves of a whole in many different ways. Just, one's more elegant and refined. One's just like, oh, we try not to go into the red thirst. And everyone's just like, sweet blood for everybody. Just very opposite ends. So it's kind of interesting to me. You think about the Flesh Terrors, how they kind of like just really walk that line in between, which kind of makes that really, to me, a lot more interesting. But this book to me was sad in so many ways. And probably because I'm seeing so many of the things that are unfolding in Betrayer with it. Just kind of the start of the fall of the Legion. And it's one of those things that you got Draeger and you got Brond. You just want the things to be the way that they were. We don't have to go after Terra. Like, that was stupid. We never should have done that. But let's just, all be together and, like, do our things together without realizing, and they think Kharn's going to be the one to lead them when really Kharn doesn't care either. He's like, oh, okay, well, we can be reunited in that we're all going to die together. And he says that very plain and clear here. Just, our fate is together. We're going to die.
What does he say? Like, what does he say to Draeger? You want to unite the Legion?
Mm-hmm.
Here you go. Like, this is your opportunity. And I do like when... It hit me real hard in the feels when Draeger's just like, oh, they've left me a perfect shot. And he kills the Emperor's Children emissary, and just, when he says, he's like, nothing brings people together like a war.
Mm-hmm.
But that idea that you're absolutely right, that Kharn basically tells him, you want to bring our Legion together? This is how it's going to be. It's going to be because we are united against killing the Emperor's Children. We are united against killing insert opponent here.
Right. And Brond won't refuse to see it that way.
Right.
He has this grand vision about them being civilized, and it's kind of sad, really.
It is.
Because I think Kharn is the only one who understands the Legion at all.
Well, let's dive into that. What are your thoughts? So I call this like the middle stage of Kharn because you're reading the Betrayer, so you get to see pre-Kharn, like pre-heresy Kharn, right? I mean, it's kind of sliding into the heresy there, but you get to see.
Well, like even reading Karn, like in the first 5 books, because he's mentioned in there,
Mhm,
and he's very calm and reserved, and he and Loken get along very
mhm.
well. And I got to see him a little bit in the Sigismund book, where he's just like, "Well, we battle together. Okay, cool. Do we just become best friends? Yes." You know, uh, so
Yeah, basically.
so some of that, and I was kind of. Wait, that wasn't Betrayer. See, now the problem with reading Betrayer, sometimes I'm getting some of these things confused because I was
It's all good.
because they even mentioned that in this book. No, that was Betrayer. They mentioned them fighting together. So yeah, so I am kind of seeing the bits and pieces of Karn, and I have seen Rage Monster Karn and Shroud of Night, where it just was basically just like, I want that skull, and I don't care who I have to kill to get that skull on the way up there.
Exactly. So this is an interesting stage of him where he's not quite the berserker yet, but he is definitely not dude he was pre-heresy,
No,
right?
he
There's
hasn't
something.
totally slid into the whole blood god thing either. Not 100%, not yet.
No. What do you like him as a character in this middle stage? Like, is it
Well, yeah, because
sad?
I do like him. It was sad when I got to know him a little bit early on in the Horus Heresy, just to see like, okay, only thing I know about Karn is that he's this crazy man with 2 axes. So I actually see him like have like conversations and make witty comments, and so then you see here you kind of see both sides of it, kind of sliding back and forth. It's almost kind of like watching a loved one go through Alzheimer's. They have their moments of lucidity, and then they slide, and then they come back, and then they slide, and then each time they slide, they slide longer and longer and longer until there's nothing left. And I think that's the whole idea of dementia or Alzheimer's is a lot of what they're going through. I think the nails is obviously the catalyst of all of this. That's without the nails, they would still be berserkers, but not to this degree where they'd be out of control. And it's one thing that Draeger even talked about, how he wanted the control, and and Ruark was like, your need for control is going to be your undoing.
Right. You tap on something that I do also like with and this kind of blends us into my next question about the doomed nature of so many legions and just kind of the nature of the world eaters. Like you see this through Squirrel and Maven's, you see it through their point of view where it's like, oh, my master is one of the good ones, but even they kind of have this easy rapport, and Draeger definitely likes Squirrel, but they all kind of have this edge to them, which I guess, as you said, it is kind of like dementia, right? Where like they're lucid for periods and then they're not. And like with Ruach, that scene for me with Ruach was so awful when he's in the Medicaid and he's like, okay, you got to fix my arm. And she's like, yeah, okay, I will. But she the whole time a little nervous, right? And he's just kind of chit-chatting with her about his arm and like, oh, the Tech Marine won't actually fix this for me. And this kind of sucks. And then a blinking light on her bracelet just sends him into a rage.
Mm-hmm.
It, the nails are awful. And ADB handles it particularly well. We see it with Lior Vine Urkris in the Black Legion books,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they talk about like how he's constantly ticking and like, remember he makes a couple comments. Iskander makes a few comments about, oh yeah, this is back in the days when he still had control over himself, really. Awful.
Right.
And yet, they managed to discuss how doomed they are and how awful this is without having to revisit the Uncle Ben / Martha and Thomas Wayne that is the implantation of the. Oh, tell me that's not the case.
Just never
Like,
thought
oh, the
about
world
that.
eaters, we got to re-talk about them getting the nails put into their heads.
I've just never thought about it that way before. It's kind of funny.
It's 100% true. But do you feel like you understand the World Eaters now better? Do you like them as a legion? Before, after, neither, neither?
Um,
Let's call the whole thing off.
I'm not a fan of the I feel like I understand them better, but I'm not a fan of the Legion. Actually, I should change that. I'm not a fan of Angron at all.
That's fair.
And I'm not, and I know he wasn't even in here, but he doomed his own Legion, and things he doesn't even care. He didn't care. He didn't care about any of this. And, kind of like when, tossing Gorechild in the general direction of Kharn, because it had no more use for him, that's why he, became like this, the demon prince of Kharn, and it was just like, well, this isn't fun anymore. I'm out. Just kind of leaving them to their own devices, and especially like listening to the things that he does in Betrayer. It's what's really funny is how frustrated Lotara gets with him. Or she, like, at one point, she even says, like, out loud, she's just like, can this Legion do anything right? Like, I actually barked a laugh. And she's
the baddest bitch in the galaxy.
And she's right. Like, there is no planning. And on one hand, they don't have to, but on the other hand, they don't care how many of them get killed. We saw this on Istvan 3 especially. Any that may not have been on their side. And in Betrayer, they talked about how the librarians did not take the nails very well, and so their options was execution or removal of the nails. We can't remove them. So it's like death or exile. Exile. Like death by exile.
By exile. Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. It is.
Because at least... The only thing I'll say about Fulgrim is that at least at one point he cared about his sons. And I think that Mortarion cares as well. He doesn't care about Typhus, but nobody cares about Typhus. But Mortarion cares.
I mean, obviously, he sacrifices himself and essentially his legion to Nurgle to save his sons.
Exactly.
So that they don't all die.
Right.
The only two Primarchs who do not give a shit about their sons are Conrad
and Angron.
Angron.
Like I know there's that one meme, and I forget which cartoon this is from, but it's just like, Daddy, what do you want from me? He's like, I want you to die. He's like, it's like this giant spider monster he made, and he's just stabbing it over and over again. That's kind of how they both are. Like, we don't want this. We don't care what happens to you. We don't care about anything. It's just unfortunate. So the World Eaters, I understand why they would feel so fractioned and just lost. That's really the best way to describe them. They're just so lost. And those who know what they are, they're the ones that have already given themselves to the nails. Like Ruach. He didn't care because he's already given himself over to that. The last thing that I think that Angron actually cared about was his rebellion brothers and sisters in the slave pits. Those are the last people he cared about. After that, he didn't care about anything anymore. And that may be a sign of the way that the nails had gone as well. But, it's like, we talk about, different, how some Primarchs were done dirty. And I don't think Angron was done dirty. I think that he was a broken thing. He's a broken thing. And so therefore he's going to have a broken legion. And it's just unfortunate. Kharn talks about fate often in this book, and he's right. He was just like, it's our fate. They talked about, what if we did have the butcher's nails? He's like, it was our fate to have the butcher's nails. It's like it's our fate that we're all going to die together. No, we're not going to recruit. That's great. You guys have all the gene seed for stuff we're never going to do because we're all going to die. It's very nihilistic, but not in the Night Lord's way.
Right. It is. There is a hatred. The Night Lords are more, there's a hatred there, right? I mean, true nihilism. Just, I hate the world and everything in it. The World Eaters, and like the ones who have given themselves over to the nails, it almost feels more apathetic. Like, okay, this is just kind of fatalistic, maybe. Just this is the way it
I think
is.
that's the word I
And,
was looking for, is fatalistic, not nihilistic, but yeah,
very
fatalistic.
fatalistic, right? Just like, yeah, this is our future. Giant rage monsters who can't control ourselves anymore. And
They're not
it's just
that
kind
far
of our
away
lot
from
in
the
life.
orcs, but even the orcs have their moments, where they
Right.
can actually pull back and come out of their
Well, and the
rage
orcs are,
battles.
yeah, the big difference is that the orcs, they are living their best lives.
Hmm.
Um, they're lucid. Like that's just who they are, and this is fun to them. The the world eaters just lose themselves entirely. And the thing that killed me is like when Ruach is like, where am I? Like, oh, you're here. Oh, yeah, I killed this person, didn't I? Yeah, you did, and you also killed the apothecary. Yeah, I did do that too. Um, but then when there was the other scene where I think it's Drager wakes up and he's like checking his gauntlets, right? He's like, oh my god, okay, there's no blood on me,
Right.
so I think I'm good. Like, that has to be terrifying. Again, as you said, kind of like a dementia patient, or like when your grandparent has dementia, right? And all of a sudden they get that moment
Or
of, where am I? How did I get here?
look at the blood angels. They're the Black Rage, when they have their moments of lucidity. It's like, no idea what just happened. No idea where I've been. No idea what's been going on. I do have to
None.
say, though, that whole thing with Ruick, I did laugh, though, because we're talking about how you killed the apothecary. He's like, well, we dueled. It's like, yeah, it's supposed to be the first blood. It was. You cut off his head. It's a lot of blood. Like, well, okay, that's one way to put it, but
I want you to know that when I got to that scene, all I could think about was soap dish. We
oh,
cut
we
her.
cut.
Like, there's no bringing him back. Turns out, um, yeah,
Well, it turns
it's
out if you want to bring
very
somebody back when you cut off their head, you need Fabulous Bill.
pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. Which I cannot. His little cameo in this, not really him, but his handiwork with the,
I
like,
thought of you. It's like, oh, Jen's not going to handle this one well. Especially when he starts messing with it in the mirror.
bleh. At best, I picture the Demogorgon,
Mm.
or the George Foreman, as my daughter calls him. Um, like I pictured that, but at worst, I pictured, is it Blade 3 with Triple H in it?
You know
When
what
they
I
have,
actually pictured?
which Blade is
Just
that?
just talking about the crisscrosses and how things open up. What I actually thought of was Dark Knight. How they actually did the CGI for Two-Face.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I think it's the third one. No, maybe it is the second one. I don't really remember, you guys. Yeah, I think it was the third one, because there's another one that had the dog in it. Whichever one had Triple H in it was the one with the mouths opening up. And as bad as that movie was, despite having Ryan Reynolds and Triple H in it, the I read that when he was just like, "Oh, Fabulous Bill did this." I was like, "Of course he did. Of course he did. Why? Why not?"
And I kind of liked the swordsman, though. I felt bad for him in the end.
A little bit, actually. Yes.
I mean, he
'Cause
saved Squirrel, so he didn't have to do that.
Ed and he and Drager probably could have been friends.
Yeah, they talked about the mutual respect and how hurt he was.
We could have had a short story with him being the Felix to Drager's Oscar.
Mm,
It would have been amazing.
yeah.
Just saying. Like, two could have been friends. And, yeah, world eaters don't make very good friends, turns out. Who knew? Um, so, Drager and Brond are in very different places, spiritually.
Like, they want the same thing, but they want two different ways to get it.
Pretty
And
much.
they don't intersect.
No. No, and they definitely disagree. And it's interesting to me that Kharn essentially became the last hope, right? We are fractured, we are broken, our father doesn't give a crap. He gone. Kharn. Kharn will save us. Kharn is the answer. And Draeger fully believes that, right? Like, look, we just need this one guy. If we can get one guy, we'll basically go back to the way it was. Whereas Brond is more along the lines of, yeah, like, no, you're chasing a dream that never really was. Like, we can all just stay together and be friends, like, do our thing. We don't need Kharn. We don't need this,
Not only that, but Karn doesn't.
Angron 2.
Karn doesn't even want it.
No. But I think Draeger thought that he did. And I think Brond realized that
No. Yeah.
no, this is not going to be what saves our legion. We need to forge our own path. Did you like either of them? Neither?
I did. I liked them both. It's like, man, wish you guys could just see eye to eye and just kind of work things out. But
I liked Brond. I loved Draeger. Loved his character. I felt so bad for him.
Yeah.
Especially given the short story that you know Draeger's fate.
And Brond as well.
And Brond too. But Draeger meets it first.
Well, yeah.
And that made me a little sad, and we'll talk a little bit more about the short story later because it's also very important to the story. I liked them both. They both had a pet human who they saw value in and they really liked and they needed, right? I did like that Brond recognized Maven, even in the short story too, like in the future. He recognizes Maven's skills. He recognizes his use. Squirrel and Draeger, they need an apothecary. They have no one. She's the closest thing they have. But you also get the impression that there was some level, similar with Kharn and Lotara, there's some level of respect here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're not BFFs. We're not going to go hang out and braid each other's hair. But I do respect you. Even though I'm still dangerous as hell.
Right.
And prone to bouts of rage. Did you understand, like, why Draeger had so much faith in Kharn? Like, did you get that? Did you like that part of it?
I think he just, like so many of these legionaries, he's like Baruda. He wants something to believe in, but Baruda already has that thing. He knows what he believes in, and he is committed. Draeger just wants to find that something, and so he's just looking, and he thinks Kharn is going to be it.
So you bring up an interesting point with Baruda. What did you think of that scene where Draeger and Baruda are talking about the blood god?
Not very much, because I really don't remember it.
Where Baruda's just like, yeah, like, we're going to follow the blood god, and Draeger's like, those are just demons. Like, I understand that demons exist. We're not worshiping them. And Baruda and Brond kind of being like, like, weird flex, but okay.
I think, well, it kind of goes to, I think, what we see with some bunch of other of the, traitor legionaries is that, yeah, we know these things exist. Well, kind of like Fabulous Bill's the same way. He knows that these things exist, but he's like, we're not worshiping them.
To me, because typically the world eaters are all presented as a unified front in their worship of Kharn. Like, and it's also always kind of been, and I know that some of the stories, especially Betrayer, kind of lead like some nuance to that, but when you think of the world eaters, you just think of angry Kharnites, right? And we even refer to them kind of synonymously, right? Like, Kharnites, world eaters, right? If I say the word Kharnite, you're probably picturing a world eater. It was interesting to me to see that there was still a time when some of them were like, no, it's just a demon, man. Don't trust that. Well,
they don't survive.
Oh.
Like the world eaters who refuse to get the butcher's nails. You don't survive. You don't follow along with the path of the lemmings. You don't survive either way.
I hadn't thought of it that way. That's a good point. That, yeah, I mean, shit, we know what Draeger's fate is. Does that make you sad to know, though? Like, both of them end up getting killed?
Yeah, but I honestly, when it hit me like that Brond was actually in this book, you know, after I read the short story, I was just like, oh, okay. That to me actually was a sign of don't get attached to anybody here because
I
they
think
may not
world
make
leaders
it.
in general.
You know, and I was thinking about, you know, Leorvine as well, or even, you know, the World Eater Apothecary that was with Fabulous Bill.
Too Keri, too soon. AKA one of my favorite characters of like the last 5 years.
So for those who are just listening, Jen has like, you know, nice little, you know, cheerleader tears coming down her face. But yeah, so it just seems to be like this is their fate. You know, it kind of reminds me of like with the Emperor's Children. We know that there's some that are never going to die, and they're the ones that I hate the most. Lucius is never going to die. Fabulous Bill is never going to die, and I hate them both so much. And with the World Eaters, it's like, unless your name is Kharn, you may not make it, because Kharn's another one of those characters that they can't kill. It's just one of those named characters. Be like killing Kato Sicarius. You just can't kill the guy.
They do, it's going to be like because another major event has occurred.
Yeah, but then he'll be soft dead. They'll go the way of Marvel and DC and make things soft dead.
Please God, no. Yes, you are correct. I guess I hadn't thought of it that way either. Like, just don't get attached to your World Eater friends because they're not making it out of most of the books unless their name is Kharn.
Right.
Or Angron. Like, even my girl Lotara, like, she's in the siege, but no idea what is going to happen to that girl.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be in some book of the Siege of Terra.
Oh, I have no doubt. But transitioning over to Squirrel and Maven, like, we've seen the future, Maven's future, which we'll talk more about here later, but we've seen Maven's future. I'm going to make some assumptions about Squirrel.
Well, she wasn't there. So, I mean, she could be up on the ship because she is a Medicae.
Could be.
I don't know. Did he write more books in this series?
God, you know what? I didn't even look that up. Anthony Reynolds.
Because I'm curious.
It looks like no. He did write a Word Bearers omnibus, which, no offense to Anthony Reynolds, but you can miss me because Word Bearers.
Actually, because of this book, I'm actually looking into the Word Bearers omnibus because I'm curious. Like, if you can make me kind of like World Eaters, then what else can you do?
Okay, that's fair. Well, yeah, don't dive too deep into it because depending on the publishing schedule, we might need to go into the Wayback Machine. And
oh, you're not going to read the Word Bearers omnibus. We'll find something else if we're reading the Word Bearers omnibus.
oh, we're reading the RM and omnibus.
Okay, but
We
okay.
read the Fabulous Bill
To
series.
be fair, you bought that Ariman omnibus before I did, so you started this. If anything else,
First off, I don't appreciate your tone. Second off, bite me. And third, fair.
besides, there is a like limited edition coming out of Nightbringers. So if we have to go back into the Wayback Machine and reread a book that we both have already read, then so be it. We can
me with a good time.
we can find something that's not going to torture you with Word Bearers.
What if, and I'm just saying this, but like, what if they go back and they do a special edition of all of the books, and then eventually I can have Dead Sky, Black Sun, and special edition, and
Do you really want to read that 5th book?
I won't buy that one.
Yes, you will, because you won't be able to deal with a hole in your collection.
I'll get a strip of paper and just write the name of it on there and be like, there you go. tape it on my hardback copy of the 5th book because we bought it the day that it published.
I mean, there is also, the new limited edition that came out of Xenos, Eisenhorn book. I mean, we do have other books in the Wayback Machine.
We do have the Wayback Machine. That is true. I guess you're right.
So we don't have to. I'm just saying that I am interested in it because I'm really curious. That and the guy on the cover, like, I'm really curious. You guys should go look up the cover of the Word Bearers Omnibus if you haven't seen it, because I'm curious how this guy walks into rooms. Like,
one of my favorite,
like, more so than the Night Lords with the bat wings. Like,
yes, one of my favorite trivia facts that I learned recently is that porcupines are very clumsy, and they actually end up stabbing themselves a lot with their quills because they fall and stuff. And so their quills have like an antiseptic on them, basically, so that they don't get infected from cutting themselves, which makes porcupines perhaps the most edgelord of animals. But that's all I can think of looking at the cover of this book.
I did not know that about porcupines. That's fascinating.
But that's all I can think about now looking at him is I'm like, I bet they're all coated in antiseptic because he stabs himself. Like, how does he turn his head? Or, God forbid, he ever had a blonde moment and they were like, well, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I don't know. Blood. Oh my God. Anyways, you guys have to check it out. It's hysterical art. Like, not the finest. No offense to the artist. It's just not. Maybe a little too spiky. Somebody should have dialed back the spikes a bit.
We stared at it in our individual offices for probably about a good 30 minutes, like, picking out different things.
Oh my God. Like, picking out, like, every time the more you look at it, the more you will find something else to be like, wait, how does that not break off?
Remember those pictures that were in the mall that when you looked in them, you could see they were like of nothing, but when you looked at them really hard, something you could see like the 3D image like pop out. You know what I'm talking about?
See the sailboat.
Yes, the sailboat. That's what this was like.
Or the schooner. Yes. A new detail just popped out and you were like, oh my God. Like a Where's Waldo book.
Yes.
Like, oh, look at that. That person has a little hat. Just saying. Anyways, focusing. Where were we?
I don't know.
Talking about Squirrel and Maven. So, were you invested in their stories? Did you like them as characters? Were they good additions to the book? Were they necessary to the book?
Yes, I think they're necessary because I think it's very necessary to show, if you're trying to show that these two world eaters are actually, the good world eaters or whatever, or, the ones that are a little more under control, I think it's very important to have these two. And I think these two are actually very, very important to the story. I mean, especially the fact that she's, helping keep Kharn alive. Obviously, him being the seneschal to Brand, that's very important for later. And I was very invested in them. Like, I was actually kind of worried that Squirrel wasn't going to make it through this book.
She talked about laying in the pool of her own blood. I was like, oh, no, I already got attached. Like, I was very upset about that. And I actually legit had a thought where she talks about how, like, he's holding something and he throws it and she realizes it's her arm. My first thought is, it was like, well, there's literally nothing to save her. Like, she's dead.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean,
fortunately, our friendly Emperor's child came in. But, I mean, I was terribly invested. I was invested in their friendship. It was a little flirtatious. It was very respectful of each other. Like, these were two people who, whether or not they had a long-standing bond, they immediately recognized, right? Like, oh, you also serve a psychopath. Me too.
right.
I would imagine that a lot of the humans, and you don't see it as much with Lotara because Lotara is Lotara. But I would imagine a lot of humans on a World Eater ship would immediately have that kind of kinship of, we have to survive.
Right, the ones that aren't crazy gangbangers down in the hole.
Right, exactly. And it just, I'm always a little fascinated, especially on a chaos ship, about the mortal denizens. God, it sounds like it's literal anarchy. down there.
However, I have to say, though, this is probably the least disgusting ship of a trader marine ship I've ever read. Because, there's not ooze coming out of the walls. There's no flesh chairs. I mean, on a whole, if you're going to have to be on a chaos ship, this one doesn't seem so bad.
After you read Betrayer, there's one short story you have to read called A Rose Watered with Blood, because it tells you a lot more about Kharn, too, and Lotara. They describe being on the Conqueror. At one point, there are lice, like the size of marbles.
Is the Conqueror a Death Guard ship?
No, the Conqueror is Angron's flagship.
Oh. I thought it was called something else, huh?
Oh, geez, somebody keep me honest there. I would have thought it was the Conqueror, but I could be conflating two ships. Anyways, point being, she's on Angron's flagship, and she talks about, like, there being, like, blood flies and, like, lice the size of marbles, because they're just feeding off of all of the blood. And just, whew, yeah, to our earlier point on one of the continual conversations we have about, like, if you had to choose a chaos god, it would still probably be Kharn, because it seems the least gross. But I gotta be real honest, when, like, he talks about walking through and, like, feeling the viscera, like, squelch beneath his feet, I was like, no.
Yeah, but at least they're wearing boots.
Okay, there is that.
I mean, it's not like they're walking barefoot. They're not sloshing in their boots the way that the Death Guard are, I mean.
I want everyone to know that lives rent-free in my head. And I really did like that book. But that with Vorks, when he talks about how he's walking and he can hear the sloshing in his boots from, like, his innards.
Yeah, it's a thing.
That lives rent-free in my head, mostly, like, if you ever make the mistake of, like, stepping in, like, a puddle or water and then, like, your shoes are squeaking. That's all I think about. Just like, oh God, this is how it began. This is how it begins. It's disgusting. So I guess you're right. Yes, this is, like, the cleanest, even though I just imagine there's just dried blood flecks everywhere. But I guess, again,
that's still better than Death Guard ship.
Blood than flesh chairs.
Or flesh chairs that are still living.
That's going on in a Night Lord ship. Yeah, okay. I'm with you on this one. I reluctantly agree on that point, even though it still sounds really disgusting. But I like that they had time to make this friendship between them. It was a little flirtatious, not outwardly romantic, but again, there's just, like, this kinship between these two characters, and it did help show, as you said, illustrate the differences between the World Eaters. These are some of the good ones, but even within, you have to tread carefully, right? Because, like, she talks about how when she's in the elevator with Draeger, and she's just like, it's a little too close for me. If he decides he's going to lose it, this is too close. This is too close. This is too close.
Right, because she's monitoring him. She's seeing how he's getting tense because he's in an enclosed space. And she even mentioned, he's like, I need a report. She's like, I already gave you a report. And she notices, he's getting worse. So it's like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So just the whole thing, we gotta tread very carefully. He'll protect me, but
to a point.
As long as I don't piss him off.
So one of my niggling complaints, though, comes through Maven. The whole Bloodborne thing never gets dealt with.
Yeah, because I kept waiting for that to get resolved, where it gets out that that he and Brond are the ones that let these people on. I don't know.
I guess it wasn't important. Like, when you were the World Eaters and now you do have Kharn awake.
But however, there was a scene there when Draeger was talking to Kharn and he was trying to talk about, it's like, well, we obviously have traitors on this ship, and he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, well, we're World Eaters, that's going to happen. We need to find out who it is. Who cares? So there you go.
That's true. He's pretty much the first person to be like, that's nice. Like, we're all traitors. Yeah, but traitors to us.
Like, I didn't stutter.
As opposed to what? Yeah. that I was I wanted there to be some closure. I thought if nowhere else there would have been between Maven and Squirrel, because Squirrel, being so loyal to Draeger, of course, is incensed by this and not happy about it, and like, this is not okay. Who the hell would have done this? And Maven, yeah, weird. I thought if anywhere it would have come to head then, but then I guess that's kind of the life of the menials. Like we talked about that with what was that book? Steel Tread.
Hmm.
No big grand confrontation with the main bad guy because that's not their lot in life.
Right.
Right? Like, oh my god, there was something really crazy. There was these traders and okay, it's not really, I guess it's not our problem. I guess nobody else cares, so we don't either. Kind of the part of me wanted closure to it, but I guess it doesn't really matter.
I think there might have been more. We might have seen more of it if Squirrel had been killed. But
Perhaps.
because then Maven probably would have gone down this shame spiral. Because he was trying to warn her to get out of the apothecary.
Let's more about Maven, because he's the main character, more or less, of the short story that's in the beginning. First off, can I ask, would you have preferred the short story to be at the end of the book, or did you like it at the beginning of the book?
You know, I actually went back and forth on that because when I saw them in the book, I was like, well, I don't know if I would liked reading that short story ahead of time. But the more I think about it, the more like, I don't think it matters.
I think with Maven, I'm with you. I go back and forth because in some ways I'm like, no, I would have much preferred that at the end of the book for Brond's story, right? I would have preferred knowing that Brond gets his due from Kharn at the end. But Maven, it's interesting to see him, this old, crooked man who wants to die, right? Like when we see him in that short story, that's where he's at. And then we come back and we get to see, oh, like so many other things and so many other people. He was at one time, did not hate life, wasn't eager for death, was a good looking man.
Yeah, see,
Had
actually,
eaten
and I kept
margarita.
thinking of him as an old man in this. When talked about how he was in the pits, I'm like, well, that's just weird. You shouldn't be throwing fights. Well, of course he's going to throw a fight. He's feeble. Like, you know, and when I think it was when they started describing his arms, I was like, oh, this is way far back.
And a couple times she mentions that he's handsome, that he's good looking. Unlike a lot of the other people, right? And that's what makes him unique, is that he is a good looking man. It's interesting to see that side, right? Where it's like, yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
remember the aged thing from the beginning who's all just pissed at life and wants to die, desperately wants to die. This is where he started, and this is where he started down his path. Like, it's interesting because some of the characters, like a lot of the characters, like Brond, right? This is kind of where his path ends. Everything that comes after this, it ain't good
Right.
because he's a world eater. Same thing with this guy, but that's kind of the start of his arc towards how he becomes this. Just, I loved when Kharn has the realization. There was two things about that short story that I thought were very artful. One is when Kharn has the realization, oh, Brond didn't send you. You want to die, don't you? Um, Also of note, Brond still like shields him and tries to save him,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was really nice. But the other thing that I really liked was the revelation that Brond did not send him. That he went out of his own volition because he's like, we need you. Like, I know how this is going to play out. My master's going to die. This is going to be a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And that realization of, oh, okay.
I don't think he really thought Brond was going to die. When Karn came up, I think he's like, okay, this is how I save my master. And he was still shocked when he killed him in the end. I mean, I was surprised when he killed him, and he was just like, when he just said, the blood god cares not from where the blood flows. Like, oh, well, we got no friends or foes here. It's just let the blood flow.
I did like there was one detail in there that I really liked with the flesh terror. When they talk about him talking. And even though he's like a savage nightmare and he talks and they're like, oh, so refined. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he is the son of Sanguinius. And the whole fight between him and Kharn, if you can call it a fight.
Was it a fight? I don't know what it was.
An execution.
Yeah, something.
I do appreciate that everyone basically shows up and is like, oh, Kharn, we'll kill him. Really?
Kharn's got plot armor.
Only has plot armor. He's Kharn. Like, this guy's he's infamous. He was infamous before the heresy, right? Like, these are the people who were plot armored, but also just, you know how many people this man has killed? But oh no, don't worry. Our flesh terror, he's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens to Maven now?
I don't know. Does it become Kharn's seneschal, or does he just just hang out there in the bloody sand or bloody snow or whatever?
Secretary job ever.
What?
Worst secretarial job ever. Kharn's equerry.
Well, because he said he's like, well, you have some usefulness yet. That's how the world eaters see everything. Well, you're useful.
Right?
Waste not, want not.
No, there is that, and Kharn has already established that our legion, our Primarch, our legion, if it's of no use to us, we get rid of it. Whereas this guy still has some use, but what in the hell does Kharn need a seneschal for?
What does Kharn need anything? I mean,
Good point.
that's why I was kind of hoping there'd be more books.
There should be, damn it.
Hey,
I also did like
Reynolds, you haven't been
Right.
forced out by Black Library yet. Get on this.
other Reynolds.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So he hasn't been forced out, so get on this. What are you doing?
Exactly. What are you doing working for Riot Games? My God.
Oh, is he?
I
Come
also
on, nobody cares about League of Legends anymore. Write this stuff.
the entirety of esports enters the chat. I really loved the sections in the short story where you get to see from Kharn's point of view.
Right. Especially when you realize it's maybe it wasn't real. Maybe it's just like a weird blood
They killed
dream.
Maven, and I was like, oh, that just to kill him? And then the next scene, he's just still sitting there, and you're like, oh.
Right.
He envision it, it's almost he almost Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, is it?
Yeah. That's
Where
a good
he
way of
goes
putting
through
it.
it and then decides whether or not it's worth it or not.
Right.
Like, you want to die. Kharn doesn't want you. You're also weak, and I can kill you in one hand stroke. It's not gonna bring me glory. Which, of course, they are all about glory, which is one of my favorite things about the World Eaters.
You got problems.
You know, I'm combatant.
You got problems.
Oh, that's fair. I gotta own that. But I'm with you. I came into this and I was like, oh, we'll see how this is. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, being a World Eaters fan. I want more.
Yeah.
Especially post Rift. We did get to see him in Shroud of Night.
Oh, crap. You're right. Because the way Black Library runs down, they're not going to let him finish this. Although he did talk about, did you read his intro where he talks about how he did have a full idea for writing about Scalathrax? You can still write about that. Get on that.
Well, that made me sad too, because I did know, right? Like, I knew that the whole thing on Scalathrax happens because they're fighting the Emperor's children. I didn't realize that that's quite how it started. Of, we're gonna all come down here like friends, and then, no.
Well, and the whole thing was just so petty. Like, they're like, we want to attack that system. Why? Because it's there. And then they get there and the Emperor's children are like, no, this is ours first. Please leave. And instead of like, okay, we'll go find another system to, it's like, nope, we're just going to kill all of you. Part of it is we're still mad for what happened at the Siege of Terra, but other part of it is we don't like you. There's actually one thing that cracked me up when the emissary is pleading with Kharn, like, let's not fight each other, let's turn our ire, towards, Gollum and Sons and list all these people. And then he gets to the, the fifth, and he's like, we love the fifth compared to you. It's like, oh, God.
Love that. Yes, when he's like, or the scars, and we always liked the scars. We never liked you. Like, I get, okay, yes, you are correct, because I guess I pictured there to be more to it than that, other than just,
I mean,
you guys are kind of poncy and we don't like you.
What was that line? It was from City Slickers, when Billy Crystal's character said, women need a reason to have sex, men just need a place. Emperor's children need a reason to go to war. These guys just need a place. They don't care. Whatever.
Pretty much. They're just like, oh, okay. And I guess I wanted the rivalry to be something a little bit more than just like, nah, we just don't like you. And you're also being kind of dicks to us. Like, I did like that Galerius was embarrassed about that, by the way, when he's like, no, they're being very rude. How do I know your legion better than you do?
Oh,
like, this seems on brand to me.
Oh, when he's like, they're being very disrespectful.
Yeah. It's like, duh? Like, that's just kind of how the Emperor's children do. But yes, when he ends it and he's just like, we will call this place Scalathrax, I was like, oh, no, that's very bad. And then it got me wondering, like, my conspiracy side was like, did the demon explain that was coming? And Kharn was like, bring it on. When he was like, oh, you're the betrayer. I did like how Kharn was like, okay. Like, everybody else is like, what does that mean? And he's just like,
I don't think Kharn even cared. It's like, whatever. Yap.
Right. I think you're 100% correct on that. It was just a little weird to me that he was just like, all right, take it in stride. Yeah. Maybe because he knows and doesn't care. I don't know.
No, I don't think Kharn cared about anything.
I think that's fair too. I think this Kharn just doesn't care. As much as I have had fun, because this summer has actually been pretty cool because we've read a lot of little shorties like this. It's been breezy, chicklet. It's been nice and easy and fun, but we're starting to come to the end of the summer here. I'm really excited that we get to dive back into the Imperium. We did Aramen, we've done Kharn. I need to get back into just some good old-fashioned corruption.
Of a different sort.
Of a different sort. Of the more pedestrian, bureaucratic sort. We do not have our copies of Vaults of Terra, The Dark City yet, but that is going to be our next book. I'm very excited. Mostly because I've been wanting to know what the hell is going on with Spinoza.
I'm not as I mean, I'm excited that it's here, but I would rather have had the next Watchers of the Throne.
Literally just had the second one.
So?
You're gonna have to wait, Veruca.
No.
I hadn't thought of it that way before. And I like your ideas and would subscribe to your newsletter. I also want Vaults. I also want Watchers of the Throne 3, but I will settle for Vaults of Terra because I'm not lying. I think we even mentioned this in a podcast semi-recently. I was like, I want to know, like, what happened. Erasmus Crowell basically was like, well, that messed me up. I gotta go. And Spinoza.
Well, basically, he comes back as, like, a parent who went out of town for a weekend, came back, his kids had a party and they trashed the place. He's like, I can't leave you alone for 5 minutes. I'm out of here.
there's going to be some fallout for that. I don't think anyone's walking away from that super
No.
happy. No. I want to see, though. I want to see the fallout of that. I want to see how everybody lands. What is everybody thinking about this? What is Crowell doing?
Aside from disrupting the Astronomicon for a little bit.
Well, he didn't do that. Technically, they were doing that.
He was there.
He was there. God, I hope they don't try and like pin that on him. Anyways, there's just a lot going on that I'm really excited for it. I feel like this is going to be, because like one of the things that we joke a lot about Robbie Bobby's voicemail, I feel like we haven't read a book in a while that would end in a voicemail to Robbie Bobby. Mostly because this one takes place like way too early for Robbie Bobby.
I guess so.
Yeah, we haven't read one in a while where it's like, oh yeah, no, this definitely ends in one. I think the last one.
Well, the last one, so it ended when the beacon went out, and that was when the demons were invading Terra, right as he came to Terra. So it may or may not end up in a voicemail because they don't know if he's there yet. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I think they do know he's there now. I mean, and that'll be also interesting because, as you said, it was all kind of taking place in the lead up to that. It'll be interesting now that, Gulliman's around. And there's a lot of crossover between the Watchers of the Throne books. So,
well, just in the timeline, yeah.
Yeah, I had to go back and look. The last book that we read that ended in a voicemail to Robbie Bobby was Assassinorum Kingmaker.
Oh, that definitely ended in a voicemail to Robbie Bobby.
That definitely ended in a voicemail. You've got bad news. Because Dawn of Fire, Throne of Light, he's an active participant in that series. So I don't feel like that ends in one. The Triumph of St. Catherine, definitely not. Huron Blackheart.
Well, Huron Blackheart, like, he was kind of there. I mean, he already escaped the Red Corsairs, and he was there taking his ship back. Still actually one of my favorite endings for a Trader Marine book.
I feel like Huron Blackheart is like low on the list, right? Like when you go through your house, like your home repairs in your house, right? He's like the old holes from nails from the previous owners. Yeah, we'll spackle that later. I don't care about that right now. He's very low on the list. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah,
so hopefully I have a feeling that it'll end in a voicemail. Or maybe he'll be there. He'll make a surprise appearance.
So he won't need a voicemail. All right, guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, so that's our next book.
So I get my book tomorrow, so.
Hopefully I get mine tomorrow. I want the thing.
No, yours is going to come while you're on vacation. You're going to have to wait. Ugh. I'm just going to text you spoilers the whole time you're on vacation.
Don't you dare.
She's going to block me.
I will. I will straight up be like, yeah, nope, I do not know this person anymore. New phone, who dis? Blocked.
That'd be hilarious.
I would. You want to take us out?
I know you would. That's the funny part. So you've listened to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding Kharn, Eater of Worlds by Anthony Reynolds. So be sure to join us next time for The Dark City by Chris Raitt. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library. Ooh, everything almost fell. Or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crag. And I'm still Alfarius, just in case you were curious.
World Eater, so you can World Eater while you World Eater.
That's a lot of eating of worlds.
A lot of world eating.
Wait.
That's all I got.
Is there official band Jimmy Eat World?
Have you listened to Jimmy Eat World? No. Oh my God, no. They would listen to that and be like, make it stop. Death Clock. They'd be down with some Death Clock.
They would be. That's true. They would be down with some Death Clock.
Nathan Explosion might low-key be one of the missing members. The World Eaters.
Tune in next time as we discuss the bands of the 40k. Or of the legions. That could be fun.
That actually could be fun.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.